Good morning, DZRJ, 8:10 a.m. The Voice of the Philippines proudly presents Piracy Watch with attorney Sarah Jane Sugitan, exploring the concepts of intellectual property rights and protection, teaching you how to protect what you create. And now, here's your host, Sarah Jane Sugitan.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Piracy Watch, where we talk about everything and anything related to your intellectual property, be it a copyright, a trademark, or your patents. Actually, there are other forms of intellectual property such as the design, utility model, and industrial design. Okay, joining me this morning is Miss Michelle Flor from the National Library. But before we discuss the relevant provisions of the law that make the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines and the National Library work together to protect the rights of artists and authors, I'd like to address the question sent in by Miss Bria Soto from the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society. So according to Miss Bria, she's a writer with a publishing company, and her works were published as parts or chapters of some books. After a few years, I had to relocate to another province, so I left the company. I soon found out that most of the books that contain my works were published again as second edition, third edition, and so on and so forth. I no longer work with that company. Am I entitled to receive any compensation for the republications? Again, that question is from Ms. Bria Soto, and basically she's asking, as a writer with a contract with one publishing company, and with that publishing company reproducing her work in second, third, and fourth editions without her knowledge, is she entitled to any compensation? Okay, this answer is from Attorney Mark D. from the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. Ms. Bria, it depends whether or not you are entitled to receive any compensation from the republication of your work. If you were an employee of the publishing company, then they own the copyright over the work that you made for them. This means that they may reproduce the work without your permission or without paying you extra. Yan, unless you had an agreement that says otherwise. If you are a freelance writer, on the other hand, and you were commissioned to do just that one particular project, then the situation would be reversed. The publishing company would have to pay you for every publication because you only gave them permission to make only one publication. Every republication requires your permission. Okay, that answer is from Attorney Mark D. of the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, and I'd like to thank the Filipinas Copyright Licensing Society for hosting this Huntahan segment. Yesterday, they held a Huntahan workshop for women writers in celebration of the Women's Month, and that workshop was held in the University of the Philippines in Diliman, and yours truly was the speaker, one of the speakers rather, for that particular workshop. And we talked about, first of all, copyright, how is it obtained? What is the scope of copyright? And a lot of very interesting questions were asked during the open forum. One of the writers there informed me that she's been writing since the 1970s, and she's an academic, and her books, her thesis, for example, her papers, her studies were published by the university. And before, she said there was no such thing as copyright in terms of, they were very possessive as writers when it comes to copyright. Now it's a developing issue, and a lot of artists and authors, of course, are becoming more and more aware that copyright exists from the moment of creation, and that even if before they did not write for profits, now they get very possessive with their work, especially with the advent of technology and with websites, when their works get republished on the web and without their prior permission, and they feel aggrieved somehow. So yan, so very, very aware na po yung mga writers natin, artists, and other creators of intellectual property as to their copyright. Ayan. Yesterday and last week also here in Piracy Watch, we discussed that with regards to works, creative works, the law provides that there is automatic protection. So from the moment of creation, copyright is, well, you don't need any formal registration under the law and under the international treaty that is called the Berne Convention. This Berne Convention was actually convened in Berne by the author of Les Miserables, no less than Victor Hugo, in 1886. And so they gave birth to this treaty, one of the foremost provisions of which state that copyright automatically inures to the creator from the moment of creation. Walang formality requirement. However, under our law, we do encourage people to deposit a copy of their works in the National Library. Ayan. And joining me this morning is Miss Michelle Flor, the copyright examiner of the National Library, to tell us more about ano po ba yung functions ng National Library relevant to intellectual property.
The National Library implements the provision on the deposit and registration of copyrightable works. So primarily, that's the function that's related to intellectual property. So we have a register of copyrightable works which are submitted to us voluntarily. Registration is voluntary because, as you said, it's from the time of creation.
From the time of creation, yes. As ayun nga, lilinawin namin for those of you who think that they have to register, there is no registration requirement. However, we encourage you to deposit a copy kasi usually when conflict arises or meron ng threat of a lawsuit, infringement, you stole my idea, this writer stole my idea. Yan. So it's very relevant that there is a record that you own that work, that you created that work. Tama ba, Michelle?
Excuse me. Yes, although yung record na yon pwede ngang i-dispute ng ibang parties with other evidence, di ba? Pero parang it's used as, most of the time, it's used as evidence nga.
It's used as evidence. That's why
ownership. Pero it does not mean that if you register somebody's work, sa'yo na yung work na yun. Because ano yan mostly yun yung misconception ng clients namin minsan, ng mga applicants. Ang inisip nila parang trademark or patent na first to file.
The first to file. Yes, with the other forms of intellectual property, ang pinaka-registry po natin dyan, parang register of deeds natin dyan, is the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, which is under the DTI. That's for trademarks and patents. But for those of you who have songs, have written novels, diba? Made sculptures, for example, any creative work, copyright po yung intellectual property that is applicable to you. And we do encourage you to deposit your work with the National Library. What's the process? Is there a fee, a form?
Yes. The form can be obtained from the website of the National Library. And then there's a 200 pesos application fee and you need to submit 2 copies of your work.
2 copies? Paano kung sculpture or painting?
Pag sculpture or painting, pag sculpture, pwedeng photographs ng sculpture.
Pwedeng photographs.
Tapos lahat ng angles ng sculpture. So front, back, side, and then para complete yung everything. For paintings, we also accept yung
the painting
photographs.
The photographs.
Just replicas of the work actually. Before, we used to accept replicas of the work pag paint sculptures, paintings, ganyan. Kaso, there's a problem with storage. Maiipon masyado. So, just the photographs will do.
At the moment, how do you store? I mean, do you have a warehouse off-site?
We have a warehouse inside.
Inside the National Library?
Inside the National Library.
Incidentally, the National Library is located in
TM Calao.
Yes, in Calao Street. Yan, in Manila proper.
Yes.
Yan.
Beside Luneta.
Yeah, beside Luneta. So, all of you artists, you should take time to visit the National Library, ang ating pambansang aklatan. Ayan. Do you administer the other libraries in the provinces and the schools?
At the moment, we have a public libraries division. They're in charge of the public libraries in provinces. So, yearly they provide, they have a budget for that. And they provide books for the public libraries. Because the public libraries, before cities, municipalities, even barangay libraries, before they establish, they enter into a MOA with the National Library.
Okay,
and then we help them with the development of
the respective
libraries. Yes, we provide them with books every year during
the
public library day. No, actually the management sometimes it comes from the LGU already.
From the LGU already.
Yung staffing is from the LGU.
Okay, so yung I'm curious about their warehouse inside the library kasi napipicture ko parang Dan Brown. You have works of art stored in the National Library.
It's not that extensive.
It's not that
the works
extensive.
of actually since I think before pa pag works of art, we don't have the exact copies of the work of art.
the
Of
work.
course, because it belongs to the
Oo,
how can they
the artist.
sell or use yung work nila if it's stored with us. So no, mostly it's photographs or ng works of art.
And books.
Books,
Mga
kasi
or-
books, we have, di ba there's two classes of work. I mean, two kinds. They submit either published or unpublished work. Published if it's disseminated. For published work, di ba we get 2 copies. The one copy goes to the collection of the Filipiniana division. So it's available for use
Oh,
ng
for
public.
browsing.
Yes, for
yeah,
browsing.
okay.
For the unpublished work, we keep that in the stock room. Kasi
Okay,
we
for
can't make it
unpublished.
public kasi it's still unpublished. Diba?
Okay. So, ganun pala. May respect for unpublished works in the sense that even if you deposit a copy with the National Library, it's not open to the
The
public.
yes.
Oo.
The only way that someone can have access to the unpublished work other than the staff of the Copyright Office is for you, either you have a written permission from the copyright owner, or if it's going to be used for dispute, ganyan. Dun lang,
Okay,
by order
so
of the
dun lang.
court. So otherwise, it's not open to the public.
It's not
talaga.
open to the public. The warehouse or the deposit.
The stock room,
the
actually.
stock
It's,
room.
at the mezzanine of the national, the mezzanine of the 4th floor of the national.
How many floors does the National Library have? It's one big building.
Yes,
and the
one
whole building is the library.
The library side, it has 4 floors. The offices side, it has 6 floors.
Okay, so very many functions of the National Library other than copyright, registration, or deposit. How is it that the Supreme Court Library is also part of the law? I mean, is there an interface
Actually,
between...
it's in the law, but if I remember correctly, they don't accept works.
So
Because
it's-
they also have problem with storage. I think they only accept law books.
Law books, okay. Not everything.
Not everything.
Oo.
If
Unlike
you want
the
to
National
register, if
Library.
you want to register your work, you go to us.
Oo, better. Kasi you have a wider scope in terms of
It's
accepting...
everything kasi we accept all
Oo.
copyrightable works. Sila law books
Oh,
lang.
unlike in
talaga.
the yes, and I can imagine that you have a problem with storage kasi not only books but you store photographs and you've been in existence since the National Library has been around for quite some time.
Yes.
So
It celebrated its, I think,
50th golden
more than 50
more than
years,
50
I
years. So
think,
imagine the works accumulating in the National Library. Okay, so we'll be talking more about the National Library and your copyright after a traffic and weather update from Charlie of Traffic.com.